faithfully delivering value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. Today we're exploring self-coaching, subtitled Changing the Habits of Anxiety and Depression. In our fast-paced, high-stress society, feelings of anxiety and depression are becoming increasingly common. Frustration, worry, fear, feeling worthless. These negative emotions trap many in pain and struggle. The author, American psychotherapist Dr. Joseph Luciani, battled anxiety since childhood. He constantly worried something bad would happen. To combat insecurity, he chased perfection relentlessly. If he made a math error, he'd erase everything rather than fix just the mistake. In social settings, he'd constantly please others, avoiding sharing opinions, terrified of disapproval. But these behaviors didn't ease his life. They multiplied Joseph's suffering. In college, he'd had enough. He studied psychology to heal himself, becoming a therapist after graduation. His personal journey and clinical work revealed anxiety's deep ties to thought patterns. He believes insecurity fuels both anxiety and depression. To overcome them, we must start by building security.
He developed a simple yet powerful method to treat these issues.
He named this approach self-coaching. Today's featured book, Self-Coaching, first published in 2001, distills Joseph's decades of therapeutic wisdom. It thoroughly examines anxiety and depression's roots and manifestations, plus concrete self-coaching techniques. The American Library Journal calls it a guide from anxiety and depression toward freedom. The New York Times praises its quick, practical approach as a breath of fresh air in psychotherapy. Now I'll unpack the book's core ideas in two sections. First, how anxiety and depression develop. Second, how to overcome them. Let's begin with Part 1. How do anxiety and depression arise? The author categorizes them into two types: natural anxiety and depression, and destructive anxiety and depression. Natural anxiety and depression are normal reactions to real-life situations. For instance, if you have an exam next week but haven't reviewed most of the material, you'd feel anxious. Or when someone loses a loved one, they might feel depressed and listless, lacking motivation, all perfectly normal reactions. These negative emotions fade naturally over time, but destructive anxiety and depression stem from imagination, not reality. They don't disappear naturally, but persist indefinitely. Take the author. He constantly feared teacher punishments, friends disliking him, or messing things up. Despite excelling in reality and having many friends, he couldn't stop worrying about imagined scenarios, trapped in endless anxiety. That's destructive anxiety. This book examines such destructive anxiety and depression. How do they develop? The author believes their root is insecurity from early life experiences. Let's unpack this. Our self-perception and worldview largely form through upbringing. A child raised with minimal hardship and abundant love develops security, trusting they can handle challenges. Even occasional failures won't cost others approval. Life doesn't spiral downward. This optimistic confidence shields them from anxiety and depression. Conversely, early trauma, serious illness, bullying, family conflict, or abuse breeds pessimism and insecurity. A child's limited power makes such events survival threats. The child then sees the world as dangerous, feeling perpetually vulnerable with intense insecurity. This insecurity frames everything through doubt, fear, and self-rejection. The author terms this conditioned reflexive thinking. We'll shorten this to reflexive thinking. Reflexive thinking is a one-sided, irrational, childlike reaction that distorts reality, persisting even in adulthood. Many remain psychologically fearful under its influence. And, like children, they just can't see it. As adults, we have many ways and resources to tackle challenges, yet we still view ourselves as weak and helpless. Reflexive thinking manifests in various forms. We've summarized 4 common types. The first is should thinking. Children lack an objective understanding of the world. They easily believe problems happen because they're not good enough. So they think I should be smarter, or I should obey my parents more, hoping this will avoid issues. Should thinking causes feelings of guilt and frustration. It conveys a negative message that all your problems are your own fault.
It suggests that if you don't become a better person, problems will persist, yet it never defines how good is good enough.
Thus, it becomes an endless curse where we always feel inadequate and perpetually insecure. The author shares a childhood example. One day in class during the 1950s, the teacher told him not to slouch and to lift his head up. But he didn't comply. The teacher got furious, forcibly lifted his head, ended up tearing his shirt, yelling loudly, dragged him out of the classroom, and slapped him. This experience left the author shattered, feeling like the teacher wanted to kill him. After 2 days, he returned to school, and a classmate told him the teacher had been replaced and needed psychological treatment. But the author didn't feel happy. He believed it was all his fault, feeling profoundly insecure. The second type is mind-reading thinking. Insecure people see the world as hostile and believe they're easily harmed by others. So they always interpret others' behaviors negatively, convinced they can guess others' thoughts. And, for example, seeing people chatting together makes them think they're talking badly about them. If someone doesn't reply to their message promptly, they assume they're disliked. Well, to outsiders, these thoughts seem baseless and only cause unnecessary distress. But insecure people believe these imagined criticisms, making themselves even more insecure. The third type is self-depreciating thinking. Insecurity narrows people's perspective, making it hard to evaluate themselves objectively. They always magnify their flaws and overlook their strengths. They constantly put themselves down, always thinking, I'm so stupid, I can't do anything right. Even minor setbacks, like forgetting to pay a bill or being late for work, make them feel distressed or hopeless, reinforcing their self-criticism. The fourth type is all or nothing thinking. When insecure, people struggle to see things developmentally. They believe feeling down now means they'll never be happy. If they're performing poorly currently, they think improvement is impossible later. This inflexible thinking ignores growth potential, trapping people psychologically in helpless childhood states. Clearly, reflexive thinking both stems from insecurity and breeds more insecurity. Under reflexive thinking's influence, people feel life's spinning out of control. To regain security, people naturally try tightening their grip on life. The author argues anxiety and depression manifestations are essentially strategies to control life and ease insecurity. Evolutionarily, humans instinctively respond to danger with fight or flight. Anxiety is fight's form. Constant worrying, panicking, and overthinking create illusory control. Depression is flight's form. Withdrawal, avoiding, and numbing offer false control, but control is illusionary. Life constantly evolves with surprises and new challenges. Today's in-demand jobs might vanish in years due to tech advancements. Companies with strong records can suffer heavy losses from sudden crises like pandemics. All efforts to control life and avoid problems ultimately fail. Ironically, control-seeking efforts shape specific behaviors that crystallize into personalities.
These personalities then intensify anxiety and depression, creating vicious cycles.
The book details 5 resulting personality types and their consequences. The first is called the turtle personality. When facing life's problems and challenges, they choose escape, diverting energy to other things instead. For instance, students worry about unfinished theses but play games all day. Employees hit the bar daily after work due to performance pressure temporarily comforts them, pushing worries aside.
But avoidance doesn't solve problems.
Gaming feels great, but eventually you face the unwritten thesis. Wasted time breeds self-blame and erodes confidence, fueling insecurity and new avoidance behaviors, all stemming from control-seeking. And the second personality is called the self-tementor. These people constantly fret about worst-case scenarios. What if my work performance is bad?
What if I fail exams and can't graduate?
What if I never find a partner and die alone? These worries are their control-gaining strategy. They believe mentally preparing for the worst lessens future pain. Plus, anticipating problems helps pre-plan responses. This seems logical, but insecurity breeds self-denying, reflexive thinking. Self-tormentors can't objectively assess worries, often unrealistic, dooming them to perpetual insecurity. Before job interviews, ordinary people worry about tough questions, but preparation eases this. They interview calmly, but self-tormentors, no matter how prepared, still irrationally fear unknown questions or tardiness.
What if I stutter from nervousness?
They endlessly generate new worries, maintaining constant fear and tension that deepens insecurity. Chronic worry also causes headaches, stomach issues, insomnia, and weakened immunity, all control-seeking consequences. The third personality is called the porcupine. They avoid deep intimacy, believing closeness invites hurt. Seeing everyone as enemies, they display hostility to create distance and gain control. Hostility manifests passively, ignoring messages, pretending not to hear, with an I don't care attitude, or actively through provocation and attacks.
Especially when facing setbacks, porcupine personalities struggle to calmly address problems objectively.
They view frustrations as personal challenges, reacting with intense hostility and aggression. The book gives an example. Accountant Sam took his family to Disneyland, only to find his reserved minivan unavailable at the rental counter. The rental clerk apologized but said she couldn't resolve the issue. Number 4, seeing his wife's disappointment and kids' impatience, Sam felt his manhood and parental image threatened.
Suddenly, he erupted with fierce hostility toward the clerk.
Who does this woman think she is?
Nobody treats us this way!
He raged at her, his words growing increasingly unreasonable.
You think I'm a fool? You're the fools!
I'm calling my lawyer to sue you.
Such extreme control tactics only worsen situations.
After his outburst, seeing his family's shock, Sam realized how shameful he'd acted and felt deeply embarrassed. This deepened his insecurity. The fourth control-driven personality is the chameleon. They obsess over others' opinions, gaining control by manipulating perceptions. Chameleons split into two types: the politician and the diplomat. Politicians are slick, dodging blame. They need approval to feel secure. Thus, they love debating, hoping to convert others to their views. No matter the accusation, they always find excuses to convince people. During group therapy, the author met George, a salesman. George always arrived late. Others complained, demanding apologies.
George explained.
My work's swamped. I'm calling clients nonstop. I rush through calls just to make it here. This shows how much I value you all. George thought his excuses would persuade them, but they only bred more resentment. Politicians seek security by changing others' perspectives. Diplomats gain security by pleasing others. They fear angering anyone, worried about retaliation, and can never say no. The author had a patient named Matt, would always agree to requests with a smile. Once, when Matt's boss scheduled a Chicago trip, a friend excitedly invited him to a Yankees game, conflicting with the trip. Matt knew he should refuse, but couldn't, agreeing absent-mindedly. This caused him massive anxiety about how to resolve it. Fortunately, the Yankees got eliminated mid-season, canceling the game. Matt's personality constantly trapped him in dilemmas, adding stress and frustration. The fifth control-driven personality is the perfectionist. They demand excessively high standards of themselves, relentlessly pursuing flawlessness. Whether organizing closets, taking exams, or earning income, they must be number one. Their only control strategy is excelling at everything. Outwardly, perfectionists seem like life's winners. Well-dressed and confident, they multitask effortlessly, making others appear lazy, yet they're unhappy because their drive stems from avoiding imperfection, not pursuing excellence. They strive not from passion, but fear that not being number one spells disaster. Driven by terror, they stay hyper-vigilant, 24/7, terrified any misstep might cause irreversible damage, exhausting them with relentless stress. Perfectionists eventually realize they can't maintain flawlessness in work or family. The more they control, the more likely things spiral. This deepens insecurity, worsening anxiety and depression.
The author witnessed perfectionists crumbling under the pressure of maintaining perfection and fear of failure.
Some regress into turtle personalities, escaping through alcoholism. Others develop depression, abandoning all life management. All right, let's recap part one. Early traumatic experiences create insecurity, and the resulting reflexive thinking reinforces it.
To gain control and security, people develop coping strategies that form specific personalities. But these strategies don't provide security. They only fuel anxiety and depression.
Now for part two, overcoming anxiety and depression. As discussed, anxiety and depression stem from insecurity, while reflexive thinking maintains and strengthens it. Therefore, overcoming reflexive thinking naturally resolves anxiety and depression at their source. The author's self-coaching method teaches identifying negative reflexive thoughts, avoiding their control, and developing optimistic confidence to tackle problems proactively. Important note: anyone suspecting anxiety or depression should first consult a psychiatrist. Doctors can diagnose conditions and provide treatment plans. Effective medications exist but require medical supervision. Self-coaching supplements psychological approaches but can't replace formal treatment. Self-coaching has 3 steps. First, use self-talk to identify reflexive thoughts. Self-talk. Essentially, it's examining whether thoughts are realistic or irrational reflexes, sometimes questioning or challenging them to guide thinking. For example, ask if this thought is factual or unrealistic pessimistic imagination. Suppose I'm a perfectionist criticized for a work mistake. I might think this failure means I'll never succeed at this job. Then I'd ask, is this true? I'd realize it's just pessimistic imagination. In reality, job skills aren't fixed. They can be developed. Not being skilled now doesn't mean never being skilled. The author suggests recording unrealistic pessimistic thoughts and reviewing them later. Seeing most worries never materialize builds confidence to break reflexive thinking. Besides asking if it's fact or imagination, we can also ask, are these thoughts mature, rational considerations or childish emotional impulses? Matt, who couldn't say no, realized after talking with the author that his childlike panic when refusing others, fearing he'd cause trouble, was also harmful reflexive thinking. Through self-talk practice, people realize their past pessimism stemmed from blindly believing these reflexive thoughts. When we see the irrationality in these thoughts, we gain freedom of choice. We can choose not to believe them to break free from insecurity. Step 2 of self-coaching is stopping reflexive thoughts. Many with anxiety and depression have ingrained self-denial habits. Even recognizing reflexive thoughts as irrational doesn't make stopping easy. How can we effectively stop reflexive thinking? Compared to pure analysis, visual imagery has stronger emotional impact. We can imagine scenes and interact with them. For example, visualize reflexive thoughts as a speeding train with a bright red brake lever before you. Pull that lever hard while mentally shouting, "Stop!" imagining the train screeching to a halt. This mental cue helps stop reflexive thoughts. Besides emergency braking, channel switching is also effective. Picture your brain as a radio. Different channels broadcast self-criticism or unrealistic worries. You can choose not to listen, switch to more beneficial channels,
Like the Fact Finder channel, playing evidence-based content.
helping us view ourselves objectively, or the Observer channel encouraging us to pause thoughts and focus on surroundings, appreciating scenery or music, to relax without engaging reflexive thoughts. The author also introduces alternate nostril breathing to stop reflexive thoughts. Here's how. Sit upright somewhere using your right thumb to close your right nostril. Slowly inhale through the left nostril for 3 seconds. Then pinch both nostrils to hold breath for 3 seconds. Release the right nostril and exhale slowly for 6 seconds. Switch sides. Close left nostril, inhale right for 3 seconds, hold, then release left to exhale 6 seconds. And this method sounds a bit complex, not just timing, but alternating nostrils. But its complexity forces you to focus entirely on breathing, naturally leaving no mental space. After several repetitions, you'll find calmness replacing reflexive thoughts. Step 3 of self-coaching is letting go, an advanced extension of Step 2. Step 2 requires active effort to stop reflexive thinking. Step 3 teaches that ignoring reflexive thoughts is equally effective. Reflexive thoughts fuel anxiety because we believe them and seek control, creating vicious cycles. If we recognize them as unrealistic imaginings, whose fears never materialize, anxiety becomes unnecessary. Like watching a monster movie, we know the creatures aren't real, so we don't fight or flee. If we don't engage with reflexive thoughts, they naturally dissipate over time. How to cultivate this let go mindset? First, practice identifying reflexive thoughts and reduce their grip using imagery or breathing techniques. Second, practice mindfulness, whether tidying, cooking, or jogging. Focus completely on the task, experiencing the present authentically. Notice object placements, food flavors, or roadside scenery. This connects us to reality's richness, freeing us from impractical fixations. Beyond these steps, the author offers supplementary advice.
I've distilled 3 key supplements. First, trace reflexive thoughts to past experiences.
Understanding their origins builds self-compassion and reveals their irrational core. Try to find these connections. When reflexive thoughts surface, notice accompanying fear or unease. Ask if these emotions trigger memories of past events. For instance, Sam, who erupted at Disneyland, realized through counseling that his reaction was tied to his father. Sam's father was a burly steelworker who never tolerated any show of vulnerability from his son. He constantly warned Sam to act like a man, making Sam perpetually insecure about his masculinity and prone to hostility. The second suggestion is self-encouragement. Reflexive thoughts often follow patterns like, I should, I must, I can't, or what if I fail, making us self-doubt and imagine non-existent dangers. We must vigilantly spot these thoughts and counter them immediately to avoid pessimistic mental traps. For example, if my boss asks if I'll lead a new project, I might think, what if I fail? I counter with self-talk. How do I know I'll fail?
My boss approached me because he sees potential. With effort, success is possible.
Through consistent self-encouragement, we build optimism to prevent anxiety and depression. The third suggestion is keeping a self-coaching journal. List your common reflexive thoughts alongside your analysis and rebuttals. Writing itself is reflection. Journaling often brings deeper insights. Record observations. Which situations or people trigger insecurity, and what control strategies you habitually use.
Next time, consciously avoid these strategies and note the different outcomes.
Reviewing journal entries shows your progress, motivating persistence until reflexive thoughts vanish. All right, let's summarize part 2. Overcoming anxiety or depression requires breaking reflexive thinking's grip. Use self-talk to identify reflexive thoughts, then stop them via imagery, breathing techniques, or a let-go mindset. Supplement with tracing thoughts to past experiences, self-encouragement, and journaling. With that, we've pretty much covered the book Self-Coaching. The author views anxiety and depression less as illnesses and more as bad habits stemming from insecurity. We develop these habits by blindly trusting reflexive thoughts and trying to control our way to security. But habits can be changed. By persistently applying self-coaching steps in thought and action, we replace old anxious habits with new optimistic ones, finally achieving true security. All right, that's self-coaching. This concludes our interpretation of the book. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.